Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down. Brand new documentary you have to check out. Ali and Cavett, Tale of the Tapes. Robert Bader, Dick Cavett. Guys, what's up?
Hey,
nice to meet you. How's it going?
And if they forget who we are, they can always look at that.
We'll just look at you right here.
I don't have my glasses. Am I one of them?
You are one of those guys.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
What was it like for you to see yourself back in the day talking to your friend Muhammad Ali?
It wasn't like anything. It was unique. It was, I can't imagine anybody who could have the same effect on you as Ali did. His company, his being near you, as in corny sounding legends, you felt some kind of, I don't know, vibration, some kind of something he emanated that was just, you knew you were in a touch of greatness. One of the most vivid examples of it I've ever seen. And he was great fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of amazing footage. So going back into the archives, what was it like digging through, and what were some of your favorite moments to check out?
Yeah, the idea of these two guys being friends, apart from having him on the show, obviously there's such similar backgrounds, as you can tell. But the difference with Cavett and all the other shows he might have done was that there was a freedom and a warmth there that developed over the first few shows. And if you watch them chronologically, you see Ali grow to really love and trust him. Whereas the earlier shows, he's kind of angry. He's going through the thing where he's been banned from boxing. He's not going into the army, etc. And Cavett's giving him a pretty good forum to speak his piece, whereas not every show did that. So I think it became a mutual respect, and I think Ali really trusted him.
You wrote poems for Ali on the Jerry Lee Lewis show.
Well, in one incident,
Jerry Lewis, I should say.
Notorious incident, the Jerry Lewis show didn't know what to do with him, and he said, well, he just recites poetry. So they built a classical, either Greek or Roman set, I forget what, and I wrote my first endeavor in poetry.
I think it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, I got a top name to do it.
So, Robert, when I think about this film, there's obviously the relationship between these two guys, but there's also so much going on culturally, historically. Why was it important for you to tell more about Ali, who he was as a man, Nation of Islam, kind of his growth over time?
Yeah, I was a kid when this was all going on. I didn't have a complete understanding of it. I just knew that there was that long stretch where he couldn't fight. And I wanted to know more about that, and it wasn't always easy to access that information when I was a teenager. It kind of got swept under the rug. Ali did an amazing thing. He was vilified by half of the population and loved by the other half, and he turned that around to make everybody love him. And I just didn't understand how that all happened. And looking back at the material from before Dick had a show, Dick got a show in 1968, and obviously Ali was very prominent prior to that. So I had to go back and put together some of the story without the Dick Cavett show interviews, of which there are many. But there were some things that needed to be explained, because when Ali first appears on the Dick Cavett show, he's in the midst of this firestorm. So I needed to go back and sort of set that up so it made a little more sense, because there wasn't a person in this country in 1969 and 70 who didn't know what Ali was going through. But if you just show the reaction to the question without explaining it, there's a young audience that has no idea.
Right. I think one of the interesting things is also you interviewed a ton of amazing people, but just the pure entertainment value that Ali brought to the table. When did you realize he had something a little bit different from a John Lennon or some of the other celebrities that came through?
It goes back to the word unique. I've never run across a personality that was as, well, I don't know if I would say never, but similar, no. He is absolutely himself. He doesn't remind you of anybody. He doesn't need to steal anybody's material. He's just a fabulous personality that comes smashing through the screen.
Yeah, it's really cool to see that. And the other thing, like, you weren't a boxing guy, and he became your guy for a long time.
I wasn't a major boxing figure, no. I was, I think I said on the show that, this is a show Ali was on, and Woody Allen was sitting there, and we were both worshiping Ali between us. And knowledge of boxing came up, and I said, my knowledge of heavyweight boxing dates from when I was a kid, the Lewis and Kahn fight, Joe Lewis, the Lewis and Kahn, and so it dates from then up to the marriage of Ernest Borgnine and Ethel Merman. Those are my heavyweight boxing and
I
fighting.
used that clip in the film because Woody Allen's laugh when Dick says that is priceless. It just had to be.
It's in the show, yeah.
It's actually a Joe Frazier show, I think, when you said that. But it's just really interesting to me that everybody I talked to about Ali for this film was puzzled why he had to stay in boxing so long when he could have just been a fabulous entertainer. He had such a flair for comedy. His timing was that like a professional comedian. And maybe he wouldn't have made the same kind of money, but he probably wouldn't have gotten battered around the last 7 or 8 years of his career because he was just fabulous in front of the camera and just could do anything.
I think that was one of the hardest things to watch because you see over time, just with the jaw situation that he goes through, he's getting heavier. He shouldn't have been out there, but he clearly kept going back. So what was it like for you to relive that, and what were you thinking at the time when he was still fighting all those years later?
Well, I most of the times he was on, I had no idea how sadly his life was going to end. And the emotion on a Caribbean island that I was on, when one of the guys who lived there, total black population almost entirely, and he said everybody on this island cried when he came out with the Olympic torch and the Parkinson's symptoms and so on. And that was our Ali that we had loved. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that was very moving for me, and Dick started doing this a little bit before the rest of the media did, he started encouraging Ali to retire. When Ali came on the show when you were on PBS in 1978, it was after Leon Spinks had beaten him. And Leon Spinks had been a fighter for about 10 minutes.
Right.
You know, it's one of his earliest fights, and he beats Ali, and he's the heavyweight champion. And Dick is actually starting to push him about why don't you retire? And, you know, he's making jokes about it. But there was a genuine feeling that Dick was worried about the guy. And I didn't really see a lot of that on other shows interviewing Ali at that point. They were all sort of retroactively telling him he should retire, you know, 5 or 6 fights later. Or, you know, well, in that case, maybe 3 or 4 fights later. By the time he's fighting Larry Holmes, everybody knows this guy should not be in the ring. In fact, his last fight, the Trevor Berbick fight, wouldn't get sanctioned by anyone in the U.S., so they had it in the Bahamas.
Yeah, it's crazy to think
It's
what
a
happened
shame.
there.
Yeah, it's sad to see somebody who's not the same person you knew for whatever reason. But this was one of the worst. I remember. I mean, don't you think you ought to quit? And he would make a joke, but it is a shame. His instincts for anything and to do with show business were perfect.
I mean, he was the ultimate entertainer.
Well, yeah, he knew when to talk. He knew how to phrase a joke properly. He knew just how to move around on the stage, how to greet people. It was wonderful. First time I ever saw him, I was working for Jerry Lewis in Hollywood, and Ali was on the show. That was the one who wrote the poetry for. And I went outside. I heard that he was outside the front of the theater, and I went out, and he's having a brawling verbal fight with somebody, and just excoriating them, and they him, and I thought, what the hell is this? And he said, I'm getting out of here. And he moved just enough, just the right number of inches to be off camera when he broke into laughter, and so did the other guy. And it was wonderful to see.
That's really cool. One of the things
They
I
always
was
said Henry Fonda always knew just how far he was from the lens. There's that kind of talent.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I was thinking about is that you had Ali and Frazier on the show. And you're right in between them. And they're right about to go at it. What do you remember about that night?
I remember the thought, he's surely not going to do something weird like pick me up. And he said, Frazier, let's pretend we're friends for a moment and get him.
Oh, man. Classic moment.
Got me off the ground, somewhat discomfortingly, and I guess the only thing I can be proud of about it is that I looked on the monitor and I said on camera, it looked like a giant Oreo cookie.
When the film's played at festivals in front of audiences, it gets an enormous laugh to the point where you miss the next couple of things because people were still laughing at it. You know, there's something about that Ali-Frazier show that I find incredible, but it looks like Frazier's not joking at certain points in it.
Oh, he was serious.
He looked pretty angry because Ali was really playing him a little bit. And Frazier helped Ali with money when he was in his exile period, and Ali just was brutal to him. And I have a sort of a touching story that Dick and I experienced. We attended Ali's memorial in Louisville, and I was picking up our tickets at this hotel where they had the area to do that. And I mentioned his name, and the woman behind me goes, "Oh my God, is he here?" I said, "Yeah." "I'd love to meet him." I said, "Who are you?" And she was with a teenage girl, and she said, "I'm Joe Frazier's daughter."
Wow.
And this is his granddaughter. So I brought them over to where Dick was sitting in the lobby, and she said something to the effect that you were the only show that showed my father dignity during all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was very, very moving. I know he was moved by it too. It was great.
Yeah, those were big emotions that they had, and Frazier was just his instincts for how far to toy with with Ali kept him alive.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting comments from the folks who were in the film about how Ali treated Frazier, and Frazier was a fascinating character in this whole Ali drama that was going on, because the whole thing was all about who's the real champ, and Frazier ends up being the champ, but he never beat Ali.
Right.
And then obviously the big build-up to that first Ali-Frazier fight is tremendous, and amazingly, Frazier does beat him. And that just sets Ali off on his whole next trip, which is, well, let me give him a chance.
Right.
Yeah,
he was the greatest promoter of showmen that there ever was. He was P.T. Barnum and Don King and all those guys got
Nobody
nothing
holds
on
a
Muhammad
candle.
Ali.
Yeah.
Right, it was
They
him.
could all have gone to school with
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things for me from a younger generation is just the talk show format at that point. Like Lester Maddox, Jim Brown, two people from different sides of the aisle having a conversation on your show. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. How are you able to pull that off?
I don't know about that. My staff, of course, early on said, please book the show. I could say I want so and so if I can get him, or get so and so and her or something. But normally my staff just made really smart, inventive combinations of people like that, and that's good. There's nothing more fun than when it starts getting a little
tense.
trouble
Yeah.
on the air, and it turns into something either funny or tragic, and you say to yourself, people are seeing this, not just these folks here.
I spent quite a bit of time working with the Dick Cavett Show archive, and I'm always asking him questions about things like, did you put these people together to be strange, or was it that they both happened to be available that night and no other night? And it's not just something like Jim Brown and Lester Maddox. You get combos like Groucho Marx and Truman Capote, Satchel Paige, Lillian Gish, and Salvador Dali.
Yeah.
These weird guest mixes just make the show fascinating. But I often wonder, could a person have actually thought of this and what it was going to result in? Probably not. It was probably just a lot of scheduling stuff. Because in those days, you had 4 or 5 guests sometimes on a 90-minute show, and everybody's kind of traveling through town for the moment where they're promoting something or they're just available that one night. But Jim Brown and Lester Maddox, boy, that's genius of a booking right there.
Yeah. And 90 minutes also. I mean, that's not an easy
Poor
time
Truman
to fill.
Capote, he's trying to get him to come back when he leaves.
Capote, after Lester went out, admitted that he had been to Lester's Pick Rick restaurant, famous for its chicken, and that he, Truman, had partaken of it. And it wasn't finger licking good.
It's really amazing. Another part I enjoyed was all the stuff in Pennsylvania when Ali's training, and you're hanging out in Pennsylvania with him and the horses. I mean, that must have been incredible for you. What still sticks in your memory about that time?
Oh, the lovely and artful way he admitted while we were in his cabin there. He kept saying, this is my old antique stove, this is my old antique coffee grinder, this is my old antique. He was fascinated with being in the world of antiques. And then he was nice enough to mention how much he liked talk shows and watching Johnny Carson.
You're like, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Going through that footage, I asked him a question. I realized I knew the answer. Dick's in the footage riding a horse, but Ali's not. And I realized he's 2 weeks out from the second Frazier fight. They probably wouldn't let him go near a horse.
No, definitely not, yeah. What did you guys learn about Ali, if anything? I mean, you spent time with him, you knew the story. What sticks out?
Well, I probably learned more than he did because he knew him. I mean, I saw a side of him that most people probably don't know, which is what I hope to show in the film, because what I saw there was while this guy was going through probably the worst stuff he could have gone through as an athlete, he found a pretty unlikely friend in this guy, which I thought was wonderful. And it made me want to make the film.
Yeah, yeah.
You have Al Sharpton call you the whitest guy around. And
Oh, yeah.
So thanks, Al, for that one.
I've had many honors, but that one tops them all.
But he becomes a best friend, in your words, a brother. He stays
Yeah,
over at your house.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
what was it? When did you see that relationship go from guest to friend and brother?
I wish I could put my finger on it, but I remember, this will sound bad, but so I won't say it. No, I just remember one day saying to myself, and somebody overheard me, a day that Ali was on, and I was just walking through the corridor to my dressing room, and I said aloud, "I love this guy." And somebody said, "Who are you talking about?" None of your business.
You know, just watching the shows, I think you could see a certain point in the relationship where it does sort of turn for Ali, and I think it took getting beaten.
Yeah.
When he comes on after losing to Frazier, it's a different Muhammad Ali. And I don't think he showed that side of himself very often. He was humble. He was, as someone in the film so eloquently says, he was a terrific loser. He really was very graceful in that defeat. And then Dick has him on after Ken Norton breaks his jaw.
Right.
That's what he does, the "you're my main man" bit.
Yeah.
And I could see that that's not the same guy that came on, say, in 1968 and 1970, ranting about the Vietnam War, and basically without saying the phrase Nation of Islam, he was preaching the gospel of the Nation of Islam. And after a certain point, it was just this affable guy who really liked being with Cavett.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a shift in tone, because you guys mentioned in the film there's a seriousness about the way that he talks about things. And then over time, it kind of lessened. So it was nice that the entertainment could take center stage as opposed to being a mouthpiece for the Nation of Islam or anything like that.
He was in some real dangers at that point because of the draft. He didn't have any heel spurs, but he managed not to get into the Army for his convictions, and many people can't stand that. And then he was black also, so they had that to think about, not disliking him. He had a lot of hostility in the world that he was luckily missing problems in by just that far sometimes.
And then, 50 years later, he's being celebrated universally. So I'm sure it's funny to see how things have kind of evolved over time.
There's an interesting point about not willing to serve in the Vietnam War. People had said to Ali at the time, "Oh, just do like Joe Louis." Joe Louis went in the Army and he fought exhibition fights at all the military bases. If Ali had gone in, they would have put him in the front lines like the second day.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of angst about Muhammad Ali and his way he spoke and the way he said things about the Vietnam War. He was doing lectures telling people about America's Vietnam problem. He wasn't going to get to fight exhibition bouts like Joe Louis. Not going to happen for him.
And I doubt if anybody would have said to him, if you're a draft dodger, you'll never be president. That turned out not to be true.
Yeah. That's certainly
More than
judge
once,
what's
actually.
going on today.
It's the heel spurs again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny how that
played
goes.
a big
Right?
part in our history.
Do you remember the last time you saw him?
Yes. Not a pleasant thing. It was a big kind of, strangely enough, literary annual event, and a lot of writers were there, and Mailer, and they said, "He's backstage now. You want to go say hello?" And I said, "Sure." I'd seen him in quite a while. And I saw him sitting there, and at first glance it was Ali sitting there, and at second glance it was a statue of Ali, just sitting, looking straight ahead, no expression. And they said, "He might not know who you are," and I was pretty sure of that by that time. But I sat next to him, and I said, "It's Dick Cavett-Ali." And there was something in him, I'm not making this up, I hope, that stirred slightly, just enough to make me think, since he wasn't hearing what anybody said, he might have heard that a little bit, but at the end, it's a sad story for sure. They brought him out, put him at a table, and he leafed through a magazine while all this festivity going on. And I thought, I'll probably never see him again, which is quite true. I wonder how far that was from his death.
I think that was in 2012.
Yeah.
I could be the Norman Mailer benefit thing. I think that was 2012. We have a photo from that in the film. It's the last photo of Ali and Cavett, and I'm pretty sure it's 2012.
One of the late triumphs was the '96 Olympics in Atlanta, and it was a really spectacular moment. So you got great stuff out of Al Sharpton and everybody else. What was it like unpacking that moment?
Oh my God! Every person who was interviewed for the film literally got broken up talking about it. I watched grown men weep in front of the camera, and it was incredible how everybody had this really visceral and emotional reaction to just talking about it years later. I mean, more than 20 years later, I'm asking them how they felt when they saw it, and people were breaking down, and they had to compose themselves and let me take the shot again because they weren't expecting the question. It wasn't like a surprise question; it was just the natural course of Ali's arc to ask about it, and boy. People who grew up watching those fights and admiring this guy and looking at him as this powerful tower of strength, to see him in that moment blew their minds. It was really hard for everybody.
A lovable man who knocked people down for a living.
I think that's a perfect place to leave it. Guys, thank you very much. Why don't you tell everybody when they could check out the documentary?
Yeah, the film premieres on HBO on February 11th.
Feb 11.
I guess you could watch it whenever you want to now with all this fancy on-demand stuff.
Very true. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right, everybody. See you next time. Here, let's sit down.